Hi, I'm Ilana Varro. I'm here with Annalise Ash, aka Annie, to all that know her. And we're going to be talking about how to thrive through the holiday season when it comes to body image, family dynamics. Annie is a digital creator, influencer, mental health advocate, future therapist of America.
Mhm.
Am I missing anything?
I honestly don't think you're missing anything. And corgi lover, obviously.
Corgi lover. I was thinking that to be part of the intro yesterday when I was like falling
Yes,
asleep. I was like,
it's
mention corgis, mention corgis. Yet here we
absolutely.
are.
Yeah, here we are. Love.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us. And you have an incredible community you've built on Instagram of lovers, some haters, which you handle so gracefully.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
always both and. So I'd love to just kind of dive into body acceptance, body neutrality. How do you encourage your followers to embrace who they are essentially during the holiday season, which comes with
Yes,
so much pressure and stress and all that jazz?
that is a beautiful question. And I would say, listen, it's gonna be hard. And I think that it doesn't have to be as hard as we make it, which sounds really bad, but when I think of like holiday and like being fat and like that comes with all kinds of, you know, things and just assumptions and all the stuff. I think of like, getting together with family. That's like the first thing that comes to my mind. And for me, I think that we have permission to kind of back away from the conversation. Um, Being a body advocate and fat liberationist, it really just comes down to boundaries with yourself and understanding that, like, you can leave the conversation. You can absolutely just, that doesn't make you a bad activist. It doesn't make you, you know, it doesn't mean anything about you if somebody has a comment about your body. That honestly just, that doesn't label you or badge you with any moral whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything about you. So for me, when it comes to just like being body neutral during the holidays, it's really just about setting those boundaries with yourself. And I don't know, I guess just understanding that it's best to take care of yourself.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point about the fact that it's not really you, it's the people around you. It's their beliefs, their fears, their own judgments, assumptions, how they feel about themselves. And
Mm,
it's often projected onto like the IP, right? The identified patient, in this case, the
yeah.
identified person at the holiday event or whatever it is. And so that's a really good point of you don't have to buy in to the conversation. You don't have to necessarily engage. I think it's more powerful to like be direct. I think that oftentimes checks people. If you're too polite, if you're too beating around
Yeah.
the bush,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Just be like, why do you feel comfortable saying that to me? What,
put it
explain
back
that.
on them.
Put it back on them.
Yeah, yeah,
And that sounds really bold and that sounds really scary.
yeah, yeah,
But it takes a lot of practice, I would
yes,
say. So if
yes,
you're feeling a little spicy and you don't want to just exit the conversation, put it back on them.
yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
you do.
It's kind of like talk about the, you know, whatever is the direct thing that people are avoiding. Like try to be as direct, try to be as on the nose as you can be. And yes, that absolutely takes practice. You're
Yes.
definitely, a pillar of strength in this area. I'm sure there's people that are your followers that I prefer audience. I hate that term follower. Follower.
Agreed.
But a lot of your audience might be earlier on in their journey of standing up for themselves. And, what advice do you give to them if there really is this fear of speaking up or pushing back or a huge discomfort around just even being talked about, like our body being a thing that we talk about?
I, that's amazing. I hate to be perceived, even in this, like, stage in my life and in my activism, I do not like to be perceived. Like, I think that somebody who's newer to this and, has recently gained weight or is in recovery or whatever it is, however you feel about your body, kind of like I said earlier, if somebody's, going off and their whole existence is about losing weight and like, oh my God, I just heard about this new diet, whatever it is, like you can literally just like get up and leave. You can just go. That is a boundary that you can set with yourself. It doesn't mean anything about you. If you don't want to engage, if you don't feel comfortable, if you feel like you don't have the right language yet, you can literally just go. And again, it doesn't mean anything about being a bad activist or whatever. It's literally just a boundary that you can set with yourself.
Yeah, protecting your own peace of mind,
Completely.
energy, mental health, all of the above.
Completely.
Yeah. And what are some go-to phrases that you like to say when people kind of make inappropriate comments or suggestions or just conversations where you're just like, oh my God, this again, really? Do you have any kind of go-to
God,
phrases?
it really just depends on the person. Sometimes if I just like, I'm never going to see them again, I'm kind of just like, yeah, that's not really how it works. Like, that's not really a thing. Or like, that like moment in Parks and Rec where somebody comes up to Ron at the hardware store. He's like, I know more than you. Like, that's just like, sometimes it's just, that's kind of how I go about it if they're being really just like vile about it. But if it's like a relationship that I, want to protect and like, it's a family member, something like that, like, it's just being really delicate. And I'm trying to think of like a specific phrase, but it really just depends on the situation. The other day I mentioned to somebody like, I'm fat, and they're just like, no, you're beautiful. I'm like, yes, I am also fat. It's just like, it's not a bad word. And just saying like, it's actually just not a bad word. It's very neutral to me.
Right.
And just like, spicing that up in the conversation, just like throwing that in there, it like, you can like see like their like the synapses firing, just like, oh, okay. So it's something that
Yeah.
sometimes I just like to say.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Do you ever get tired of being the advocate, being the one that's like educating others and speaking up and standing up?
Sometimes I just don't do it. Sometimes I shut down and I'm just like, listen, like that's why I have my husband. Like he's my biggest ally. He's just like he's the one that's going to take over the conversation, either shift it, say something about it. Finding those people who are willing to protect you and finding your allies and keeping them close physically sometimes, it means everything.
I love that. I think that's such a great takeaway. There's no such thing as bad advocates.
No.
Advocate. Why can't I get that word right?
I don't know.
Advocate? Yes.
Advocate, yes.
I'm trying to think
Yes.
of what's the other word I'm trying to pair it with.
Um,
Activist.
activist,
Activist
yes.
advocate.
It
There we
does
go.
not make you a bad activist to like literally just like not be a part of the conversation,
Yeah.
because it's just like that doesn't mean you're a victim, that doesn't mean you're like triggered if you walk away. It just literally means that you are setting a boundary.
Yeah. And through the holidays, there's going to be a lot of emotions. It's going to be a roller coaster. So even just honoring where you're at that day, that event, just really paying attention, checking in. Maybe you're in a more vocal mood. Maybe you're in a more just kind of sit back and take care of yourself kind of energy. So not judging how you're showing up and really honoring where you're at is a huge piece of it, I think.
Completely. And I think sometimes it feels really important to stand up and say something. It's like this is my one opportunity to
Yeah.
show that I am, you
Yeah.
know, part of this. And it's just like sometimes it's just better to just like that's what I do with the hate comments sometimes,
Yeah.
just say
Yeah.
nothing. It's
Yeah.
very powerful.
Yeah. And sometimes you're like, I'm gonna put you in your place.
Sometimes I'm gonna make a video about you.
Oh my gosh, those are absolutely my favorite. I'm
Thank
just saying.
you.
Let's shift gears a little bit because I know fashion is a huge piece of your love affair as well. What are some tips that you have for holiday fashion, particularly around individuals that might not feel most body positive or comfortable in their bodies?
That's huge, especially around the holidays, right?
Yeah,
Like you are seeing people you haven't seen in a long time. Sometimes you feel like you need to impress a little bit more. Or you went to a holiday party and you're meeting your partner's like coworkers and this and that. Like there's a lot of pressure, and that's totally understandable. And I would say that like I just want to be comfortable. Um, you know, I do a lot of digging through my like I know I show up fabulous online, but like so I'm just like I have like 10 mental breakdowns when I'm like, getting dressed in the morning. I'm just like I always come back to is my first outfit that I put on where I just felt comfortable, where
Hmm.
I just felt like this is a classic. And so I think that, sometimes it's really fun to like go out and like try something new. And I am totally for that. But, like I've been wearing this sweater like 10 times this week. It's just it's a classic piece. It's comfortable. I know that I'm going to go and like, I'm not going to be thinking about being perceived the whole time I'm there. I can
Hmm.
focus on other things and being
Hmm.
present in the moment.
Absolutely. Dressing for how you want to feel, I think, is such a good tip because I don't know how many times, luckily, I don't fall into this anymore, but I would leave the house because I wanted to look a certain way and then regret it deeply because I was so
Yes.
uncomfortable.
Thank you
So,
for putting into words the thought that I tried to just have and didn't really land. So thank you so
piggybacking.
much. I appreciate that.
We're layering, we're layering.
For
But yeah,
layering.
I literally wore this sweater on an interview last week because I'm like, I
Oh,
like it. Show a little pop
yes.
of shoulder, you know?
Off the shoulder, love.
Yeah. What about people that like to say like, oh, well, you shouldn't wear that or that doesn't look good on you? Like, can you speak a little bit to like how people feel like their opinion is correct, whereas, taste is such a personal, fluid thing? Like,
What
how
a
do you show up for
complicated question.
that?
Um, People, and this is what I've learned from my haters, like people are sometimes dead set to misunderstand you.
Fair.
And they don't want to understand you. They
Yeah.
don't want to hear what you have to say. They don't want to hear what you think. They don't care how you feel. They just want to misunderstand you.
Yeah.
Um, and if somebody comes up to you and says, like, that's not flattering, or like, don't, like maybe, wear something a little bit more, okay, great. Like, I always like when I think about those uncomfortable moments, I always think back to like the people who remind me that like my body is the least important thing about me and like the least not important, least interesting thing about me
Mhm.
and that like there's no moral value in what I look like. And so it's just like that's always what I come back to. So I think that like if somebody comes up to you and says something, it's just like again, I'm being perceived and I don't love how you perceived me and I don't like that you're trying to misunderstand where I'm coming from.
Mhm.
Like this is where I am and this is how I am showing up and like that's not that interesting.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that's like a good answer, but that's just how where I come from when it
Yeah.
comes to
Yeah. And it's also, again, so personal. Like, it might not be interesting to that person, but it might be very interesting to someone else. And
right.
so it's all about assumption. And I think this ego of, I need to be right, right? Like, people that feel the need to comment on a social media post, it just blows my mind. It's kind of like I think of toddlers that just can't keep their hands to themselves or their
Oh,
mouths shut. It's just this impulse, like, okay, we have like so many thoughts in a day. That doesn't mean I'm going to say every single one of them.
like
And
this might
it
just be like the therapist, this blossoming therapist inside me, but I'm just sort of just like, what are you so sad and upset about
for
that
sure,
you're projecting onto me?
for
Like
sure.
that's a little bit funny. Like I'm kind of gonna like take that and be like, I actually look so hot right now. Like, what are you actually literally talking about? Like, that's crazy. It's sometimes it's just people are going to misunderstand you, and you got to just be like, that's your opinion, straight
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
You're not correct here.
So, what makes you put yourself out there? What is your drive to be visible and have a presence online, for example, when there's also this juxtaposition of, I don't want to be perceived or have assumptions made about me?
That's the first time I've ever been asked that question because I'm always like, I don't want to be perceived. And then people are like, but you are literally getting perceived. Um, I think that what I don't want or what I want more than not being perceived is because this came to be, this fell in my lap because I saw somebody who looked like me online doing what I'm doing now. And that literally took me from my eating disorder, plucked me right out, and stuck me where I am now. And I get messages all the time that I'm doing that for somebody in the world.
Yeah,
And like, I would give anything to just like be that person for somebody else. And so that's what I'm going to continue to do. And that's what I love to do. And it's great.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I mean, I knew, I had a feeling that there was
Yes.
a bigger purpose other than just like, let me post cute videos. It's let me be the inspiration or the hope or the guide to someone who is maybe a few steps behind where you are in your journey.
And I feel like sometimes it seems like I know it all and like whatever, but I just like, I don't, and I don't know anything, and I'm figuring this out, and we're going to do this together. And we're fighting this huge freaking fight together, and it makes it a little less lonely and a little less scary, really.
I love that.
Yeah.
What are some ways that you like to handle holiday stress? Any kind of self-care or anxiety reduction, stress reduction, skills? Like, how do you care for yourself during this kind of heated time?
Yes, I think that my go-to is first of all therapy. But second, just doing the things that I love, even when I don't feel like last night I was having a moment. My husband's like, we're going to Target. And I'm like, then suddenly I was at Target and just like, even when I feel like I don't want to do something, I'm gonna do what I love anyway. And that just like immediately reduces everything for me, just all the stress. So keep doing what you love, honestly, even if you don't feel like doing it, because it will bring you some joy.
What do you tell yourself when you don't feel like doing it? Because that is a huge mental hurdle. And a lot of times people freeze and they just can't be in action. What do you tell yourself?
I'm thinking like in the moment, like I didn't, ooh, geez, I got a text. I don't tell myself anything. I rely on the people to help me get there. And I know sometimes people don't have those folks and they really have themselves. And, it's just really about like this feeling is not permanent, and I literally just got a tattoo that says to live for the hope of it all, and I think about that and just like living for the next moment of hope, and just that sounds so cheesy. Ugh, don't like that. But like just living for that next moment where I'm gonna be okay, and just like we're gonna get there somehow. So that's kind of what I think.
Hope is a therapeutic tool. I mean, that is absolutely not cheesy. It is sometimes the lifeline for someone to just
That's
hold hope.
why I got it
Yeah,
tattooed on my body for the rest of my life.
yeah. And I love that there's kind of like two parts to what you just said.
Yeah.
One, I love being able to ask for help. I love the fact that you rely on the people in your life if you're
Yes.
maybe struggling or having a bad day. That is a huge thing. Like, let's get over our egos and ask for support.
Really.
And then the other piece of that is if you don't necessarily have a strong network,
Mhm.
there is such an amazing community online. Like, yes, of course, social media can be toxic.
Mhm.
And my hope with the work that I do, your content, it's all about creating uplifting, hopeful, connected, whether it's educational or just a moment of humor. It's like there's so much that we can access for free, whether or not we have that person that's by us that's going to lift us up. You can find that online in an online community. You can find it in a podcast. You can find it like you had the person that you followed that lifted you out of your eating disorder. I'm assuming you didn't have a personal relationship with that person. It was just
Not at all.
some random person. I think you do now, though, right?
Yes. That was a crazy cough I just did, but yes.
I love
Um,
it.
Now she's, yeah, it's basically to back up on what you just said, like that is something I tell literally everyone I meet. If anyone ever asks me this question, is like, if you are fat, if you are a fat person, or you are a disabled person, or if you are in part of this community, that community, make your feed look like you, and it social media will become a little less of a cruddy place to be. Uh,
Absolutely.
you will find some hope in that. You will find some inspiration in that. And you can lift yourself up
Yeah.
through people who you can relate to.
Yeah. Instagram audits are one of my favorite things to do with clients. Let's audit
Yes.
who you're following. What is the subconscious input that is going into that precious, fertile brain of yours?
Well, you're waking up at the first thing you do is you look at your phone and you see like, some influencer who's,
Yeah.
looks nothing like you and you're just
Yeah.
like, wow, I'm gonna have a crap day.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. I love that. Any final thoughts to share around how people can kind of have a little bit of hope or a little like tool or something to hold on to during the holiday season that you feel is going to be really key for your season ahead?
I just think about, my support system, your support system, everyone's support system. Again, if you feel lonely, you can create that community online. But, if you are going to be perceived and there's no way around it, um, set boundaries with yourself and honor those boundaries. And remember that it doesn't make you bad or whatever, it doesn't make you a bad activist to just take care of yourself and set those boundaries and honor those boundaries.
Beautiful.
It actually you know, makes you better, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And just one thing to add on to that, like, let's not expect things to be easy. Going into the holiday season, of course, we're going to see everyone's perfect photos and perfect travel and
A
perfect
highlight
trees,
reel.
presents. What was the highlight reel?
Highlight
Exactly.
reel.
Let's not expect things to be easy. It's okay if there's a bit of a challenge. It
Mhm.
helps us grow. Let's not have that expectation going into this holiday season. Let's prepare with resiliency, using skills, leaning on the people around us, and just getting through the best you can. There's always things to learn that maybe you can implement next year, but it doesn't have to be perfect, and it's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay. There is hope. To live for the hope of it all.
I love that. I love that. Bad Activist. That's going to be like in my brain
Yes.
now. I think of the show Bad Monkey. Did you ever watch that?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God, it's hilarious. Vince Vaughn,
Okay.
just amazing. Little plug for Hulu. But yeah,
Okay.
like bad activist doesn't make me a bad activist. I like
No,
it.
not at
Take care
all.
of yourself.
Yes.
How can people find you? How can they get more of you and what you have to share?
You can follow me at Annalise Ash on
Okay.
Instagram, TikTok. Literally, it's my handle on literally everything. So,
Okay, great.
yeah,
Perfect. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom. I hope you have an incredible holiday. The ups, the downs, the good, the bad, all of it.
you as well.
Make some beautiful memories. Thank you. And I'll see you soon.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.